And Jeff Ogilvy survives Wingfoot.
Now the moment Aaron Badley has waited for.
Gary Webb is the 5-time Australian Open champion.
Golf at its best by one of the best in golf, Peter Thompson.
Stand in front of a crowd like this today and win the PGA Championship is pretty special.
He's done it at last. Greg Norman.
Matt Jones gets his name on the Stonehaven Cup.
Leishman to 11 under. Now we've got a new leader, kids.
There it is! Adam Scott! A life changer. Unrestricted access to golf across Australia and the world. Thanks to Golf Australia, we're going inside the ropes.
G'day everybody, welcome to the show Inside the Ropes, episode 31 for the first time in 2018. It is great to be back with you. We loved doing it last year and we're looking forward to doing it all over again throughout 2018. Hopefully we've got some exciting Australian news to be discussing on the way through. It does look like it's going to be an epic year in the world of women's and men's golf. It's been a very, very big, busy summer. There's a load to get through. It wouldn't be Inside the Ropes without him. I don't think he's had a day off since about November 11, 2017. His name is Mark Hayes and he joins us from Golf Australia. Hello, Hazy.
G'day, Murray. I did join you on another radio show earlier this week and may or may not have fallen asleep on the microphone. So I guarantee you that I'm up and about here this week and we've got so much to talk about. I'm really pumped. And big thank you have been a lot of tournaments over the summer. And a big thanks to everyone who actually stopped and tapped me and said, when are you coming back on the Inside the Ropes? When's it happening? They love it. And I really appreciated that, especially the fact that they bothered to stop and talk about it. It was fantastic.
Here. Martin Blake joins us. There's never enough golf spoken about in Australia, is there, Blakey?
G'day, Andy. That's probably right. Actually, there's a lot been happening, but I did look at the calendar the other day, and do you realise that it's 6 weeks to the Masters? So as much as it's been happening, we've got a big period coming up. So looking forward to it, and great to be back. Is this the A team, or is it? Would you rather have Ali Whitaker here than me, or Clates or someone?
No, I think this is the A team. But then when Ali's here, I say that's the A team. And when Clates is here, I say that's the A team. So, it's not 6 weeks until the Masters. You're wrong there. It's 6 weeks until Tiger tees it up at the Masters. Because it seems to me at the moment the only interest that 99% of people over in good old US of A have is how Tiger's progressing to the first tee at Augusta. That seems to be the only thing they're interested in at the moment over there.
Well, it's funny, last weekend at Riviera, the ticket sales were double. So, and the television ratings have been up as well. So, yes, they're very interested in it. Tiger himself is just muddling along, isn't he? I mean, he missed the cut by 4. I didn't see a lot of it, but I've sort of spoken to a few people about it. What did you think, Hazy? I mean, I was listening to Jeff Shackelford talk about this on his podcast last night. This is Jeff Shackelford, the journo from America, who's been on our show last year. And he said that Tiger's body language was a bit different and his demeanour was a bit different. He was very friendly and engaging with the public, which is kind of not the Tiger we know. But, I'm glad to see him out there. I'm glad to see him trying. But I know, Hazy, you're sceptical about his ability to come back.
Oh, I think you'll want to buy your tickets on Thursdays and Fridays, Blakey.
Yeah.
I mean, a really flat round at Riviera, which is, of course, by his own admission that he knows and has dominated at the past. Like, he loves it. So I hope it's not typical, but that was a pretty bad miss in terms of making a cut. You're
not enjoying this, are you?
No, I want to see him up and about.
Of course you do, but from a professional standpoint, you were very strong on your declaration that he won't get back.
I had a bet with a mate in 2008, straight after he won at Torrey Pines, that he would never win another major, which I think he thought at the time was easy money. But I'm sticking to that, obviously. And it's
one of the greatest bets I've ever made.
That's an unbelievable bet.
Yeah, so he was 32 at the time and had 14 major championships. But he looked beaten to me physically. And we weren't to know what else was going on in his world at the time. But I still think that that all aside, I still think that his best now is no longer the best on the planet. That's a simple reason for me not expecting him to do well this year. There are 46 players who have gone past him. And I'm not talking... He used to physically dominate fields. That's not happening. He's no longer got that mental grip on people, although that you could probably argue that might still be the case if he gets into a crunch situation. once upon a time his wedges were pure, and they have been better this time around, but that's not the case anymore. And I'll reserve judgment on his putting until the crunch situation happens. But his driver is deplorable.
It's all over the shop.
It's all over the shop. It's not the driver you need to win a tour event, let alone a major championship. The only thing I will say, Blakey, is that 6 weeks till he tees it up at the Masters, that's the course on the entire tour where he could win, because there is no rough. And he can pick it up anywhere and off those pine needles and do something Tiger-esque.
Andy, do you reckon that that's what he's thinking? That he thinks that if he can just play a few tournaments, he doesn't normally play Riviera, he's playing in the Honda this week at PGA Nationals. Is he thinking that if he can get his game in some sort of shape by April, maybe he can do something at Augusta?
I don't know. It's hard to know what he's thinking. I was interested in Shackelford's observations. I reckon we talked about this late last year, that he was... He'd started to smile again, and there was a different demeanour about him. And I think he has achieved something in terms of getting back. I think getting back out there, and while we thought it was lips, I think put words in other people's mouths, but I certainly thought some people were of the view that him saying, "I want to get out there and compete with the boys again," that's what I like. I think some of us thought, no, you're just saying that. What you really mean is you want to go out there and beat the boys again. I wonder whether he is realistic enough at 42, whatever he is now.
Yeah, 42.
42, to realise that, no, these blokes have gone past me. And I'm not going to be the player that I used to be. But it is fun being out here. I mean, what else am I going to do?
So mellow Tiger.
I reckon it is. It is. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't want to win anymore. But I wonder, I'm starting to come around to the fact that maybe he does have a greater sense, a more acute sense, a more realistic sense about where he sits. You're right, Hazy. I mean, 42. There might be 100 players better than him on the planet right now, and he might know that.
Yeah. I actually heard on another podcast, the iSeek Golf podcast, a couple of weeks ago, they had a really good interview with Lorne Rubinstein, a Canadian journalist and former player and caddy, who wrote the book about 20 years on from Tiger's 1997 triumph at Augusta. And he actually said, I know he's always had a focus on winning major championships, stands to reason. But this time around, he's exclusively major-driven because he realises he's only got so much physicality to give around. So his efforts will be going into specific things. And I can't... If he doesn't win or compete in the Masters, you can stick a fork in him right now.
He was missing to the right last week. All the time. Sorry, he was missing to the left, and then prior to that, he was missing to the right.
Yeah.
PGA National this week, there's water everywhere. So he could rinse some balls this week.
His numbers of fairways hit and greens in regulation are off the charts bad at the moment. So the pressure on his short game is
his scrambling's
intense.
been good.
It has. And so that's the one thing. We thought the yips with his little kind of chips and pitches around greens might have been a bit of an issue for him, but he does seem to have that in control
sharp
at the moment.
Again.
Yeah, he does. So, look, we'll watch this space.
Maybe he's just posing for some Benevril videos.
Perhaps that's right.
Have you ever heard a bloke make a career out of taking little videos and putting little cheap one-liners out on Twitter?
He's a freak.
It's extraordinary.
A big show today. Stacey Peters Women's Amateur Asian Championship is on as we speak. She's got a new position with Golf Australia. We're going to chat to her about both. Stephen Pitt, the CEO of Golf Australia, going to come in and tell us about Vision 2025, which was released during the Australian Women's Open. So let's let that be a segue into the Women's Open.
Yeah.
You were both there. Kionga, 10 out of 10 by all reports, by what we saw. If we weren't there, it just looked absolutely mint. It's a golf course that if you play it, I reckon you'll love it. And it looked like it really, really hit the mark for what ended up being another Korean domination.
We'll talk about that in a second. But the course itself was, it's hosted men's Australian Open championships before, never a women's one. It absolutely put its best foot forward. Extraordinarily prepared to the minute course. And when you walked in the gate, Andy, it gave you that sort of real championship feel. Just around the clubhouse was an excellent atmosphere. We haven't got the numbers back yet from Adelaide, but I guarantee you it'll be a record crowd because they were pumping from Thursday morning, Friday morning around the marquee groups. It was fantastic. And, a great advertisement for probably a golfing city that's been sort of off the radar for a while because there's 3 and maybe 4 with Glenelg and other ones just outside the city, courses there that are world class. And we saw that on the weekend.
And there was an announcement, Andy, last week that they're extending the deal to stay in South Australia for another 3 years, and rightly so, because that event is going really well in Adelaide. Kooyonga, as you said, was absolutely great. I think it was ranked number 28 in Australia in the last Golf Digest rankings. It'll go higher after this tournament. The conditioning of the course was fantastic, and it worked brilliantly. I don't know why courses need to host big tournaments to jump up those rankings, but that's another debate for another day, but that will go higher.
It's a good debate, actually.
Yeah. Look, I think the LPGA co-sanction is the key for the Women's Australian Open. It just gives you that strength of field. It's a much stronger field in terms of world ranking than the men's events that we have, unfortunately, but it's because it's linked with the LPGA. So you had 4 of the top 10, 8 of the top 20. Hazy, I'm not sure how many of the top 100. There was something like 38, I think. 38 of the top 100. I mean, it's just a very strong field, and you had Koreans 1 and 2.
So, Blakey, I'll pick up a point that Hazy raised, and I'll run it through you and then jump in, Hazy. Hazy talked about the feel that you got when you walked through the gates at Kooyonga. You mentioned the fact that the deal's been extended with South Australia, with Adelaide, to hang on to the women's. The men's, has spent a long time up in Sydney, and we're all proud Melburnians. But if you're going to have a major national championship, it's got to feel significant. And I think credit has got to be given to the golf communities. And, of course, there are visitors that come in from elsewhere. But the heart and the soul and the body of the supporter base that supports those events, the men's and the women's in Sydney and Adelaide respectively, come from those towns. The golf communities of Sydney and Adelaide deserve a significant pat on the back, I reckon, for supporting the events that their local governments spend so much time lobbying to have in their cities.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, in the ideal world, I think the national championships would probably rotate around everywhere. That would be the ideal world. But in the real world, you need the money from government to support the events because it's a struggle. So, the South Australian government's been very supportive. The public turned up, as you said. It felt to me, Hazy, almost like a proper LPGA full-on golf tournament every day. And on the Sunday, there were people everywhere. And Steph Nah made a hole-in-one out on the back of the course somewhere, and you could hear the roar all around the course.
Awesome. That's great.
It was fantastic, and I concur, Andy. I mean, the support, we often in other sports have chastised Sydney supporters for being theatre goers, and it's not right in this instance. It's patently incorrect. The tournament, you could argue that it hasn't had the depth of field that we spoke about in the Road to the Open before we took our Christmas break here.
The men's, you mean?
The men's I'm talking about hasn't had the depth that it historically once had. But what we have had is just an absolute pick of the stand of the world's best players in the last 5 or 6 years. And in that time, the event has gone, noticeably, if you walk through the doors, from one level up 3 or 4 levels. The infrastructure around is great. The village is great. The support we have on so many different levels is enormous. Yep. And it's run much more professionally than it ever was. So how you judge these things, I don't know. But the support of the crowds in both Adelaide for the women's and Sydney for the men's has been first class.
No doubt. So Hannah Green, Catherine Kirk and Minjee Lee finished 3rd, 4th, tied 5th in that order. Flew the flag brilliantly. They were great.
Yeah.
They were great.
I'm really excited about this, Andy. I was over at the Australian Amateur Championship in Perth in the middle of January. And to be honest with you, we'll talk about this later with Stace, to be honest with you, there was a domination on the women's side of things from the Asian perspective. We had a Japanese winner in both the men's and the women's, and we had an all-Asian final between Korea and Japan. And I'm sort of thinking, where's the next generation coming here? What are we looking at? And I think hopefully we'll find out a bit more about that next generation when we talk to Stacey later. But what we did see in not only the Women's Australian Open, but also at the Vic Open, we saw the final group again was Minjee Lee, Hannah Green, and Karis Davidson. And among those names you mentioned there, add Steph Nah, add Karis Davidson. They were all put in phenomenal performances in Adelaide, and it left you with a feeling that, and this is unbelievable, Andy, this week, for the first time in 1,000 years, Kari Webb's dipped out of the top 100 in the world rankings. And you sort of think, what's going to happen when Kari's gone? Which is the same sort of thing as what's going to happen when Greg's gone. Yeah. Well, right now, things are looking extremely rosy. Catherine Kirk's got it all together, and she's motivated. We'll talk to her during the year. Minjee's awesome. Hannah's going north at a rapid rate. Karis is on fire. She's the one who's taken massive steps under the radar because of the other girls, but it's really promising, I think, for women's golf. And we've got 4 or 5 pushing each other in a 5-year bracket. It's fantastic.
Okay, but Blakey, how far ahead are the Korean women? I mean, this is the lure out in front of the chasing greyhound pack. You know, if I may be so disrespectful to kind of characterise it that way, is the rest of the peloton ever going to catch up with the breakaway leader at the moment? That's the question.
They set a very hot standard. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Jin Young Ko, who won by 3 shots, she's only 22 years old. She's won 10 times in Korea and now is on the LPGA. She's just got there. She's done it a bit like In Ji Chun, who won everything in Korea and then headed over to the LPGA. I mean, she's an amazing player. She's a very stiff-legged player. I don't know whether you noticed that. I've never seen a really good player swing with such a kind of stiff legs, but she's got a beautiful swing. She does everything well. I watched her go down
that's
the
why
17th.
You dance, by the way. You dance a bit like that.
Yeah, that's true.
I didn't realise you
like
were
a zombie.
Martin Harmon, by the way, here.
Sorry. Well, yeah, I just gave her a bit of advice, and I think she's good.
No, a bit more fluidity in her legs next time.
Jin Young Ko, really good. Hee-Jin Cho, who finished second, is an unbelievable player. She's only 18 years of old, Hazy. Yeah. They set a great standard. Look, that's the world standard. You've spoken to Mike Clayton about this before. I mean, they work extremely hard and they set the standard, and everyone else has to catch it, and it's not easy. But, Hannah Green at 21 years of age to finish third. She picked up 87 grand there. I mean, she's well on her way to keeping a card already, and she's only played 2 LPGA events.
So a couple of things on the Asian thing. Blakey wrote a really good story with Dean Herden during the week, which is fantastic. Gave a great insight into, how things happen in Korea.
He was a caddy for Jin Young Ko, yeah.
Yeah, big Australian guy. He's passionate about women's golf, and he's actually won. Now I think that was his 52nd or 51st.
52.
That was his 52nd pro title as a caddy, Andy, on Sunday. It's unbelievable. So this is the Steve Williams of women's golf, effectively. Yeah. He gave Blakey great insight into different things around the Korean culture and how it comes together. And we've talked about it before, but the 3 levels of professional tournament play in Korea is phenomenal to me. So there's a development tour, a sort of a secondary tour, and then there's an elite tour. And they're all supported and backed on television, and they're rock stars.
It's crucial, I reckon. This is a really crucial point.
Yeah, and we have to get, if we want to be competitive at that level, and I don't know if we can have the massive numbers, that's something we might talk to Stephen Pitt about, but if we want to have that interest and that development in women's golf, we need to have that adoration of young girls coming through, and the respect that the young Korean girls must have for all these superstars that they see on television every week.
Tell the world how good they keep telling them.
Yeah.
Even when people don't want to listen, keep telling them. Keep pushing it and doing it, and use any vehicle you've got. Things like this and radio shows and your own websites and word of mouth, and just keep telling the world how good Hannah Green is.
Yeah.
And then hopefully enough people are going to go, oh, that Hannah Green's in town this weekend playing in this tournament down there. I'm going to go and I'll go and have a look at her, and then hopefully the thing starts to build its own momentum. Because I guarantee you, when the Korean golfing authorities decided, and the TV networks, I've got no idea how it works over there, but when they decided we're going to invest in women's golf here, and we're going to bite the bullet here, and we're going to start to fly the flag and commit to this the way they are, there may not necessarily have been a groundswell and a huge body of willing support for it back, but now. They are rock stars.
This is American basketball. It's Canadian ice hockey. It's Romanian gymnastics. Whatever it is, this is
T20 cricket.
Yeah, it's domination by a country of an event.
Okay,
it's the All Blacks in rugby.
It is.
That's the expression.
Perfect.
It did feel like a passing of the baton, Andy, with Kari missing the cut. And Kari also spoke before the tournament about her schedule this year, which is going to be part-time. She's talked about only about 10 tournaments, and she talked about months and months and months at home in Townsville, just hanging out. So these young players have got to step up, and I think they probably are.
She hasn't retired yet. There'll be a time when we can sing the praises of Kari Webb, ultimately. But gee, she's been.
She actually said she might never tell anyone that she's going to retire. She might just play till she's 80, but just keep pottering along. It's the first time I've seen Kari since I upset her last year. I mentioned this to you last
seen
year.
the
You're going to go
daggers.
there again. I can't believe you're going there again.
I
Just the daggers, Andy. It was incredible.
I had to sort of ease my way up to her after the little press conference and say, "Oh, have you forgiven me yet?" You know, because for our listeners, I wrote last year that Kari might be finishing up at the end of the 2017 season, and she texted me and said, "Do you know more about my career than I do?" Anyway, she seemed quite friendly. I got through that. So, but I wasn't too far off the mark, was I? You know, she's not retiring, but she's just going to play part-time.
I just want to mention a couple of things there, and we'll come back to Handa Green in a second, but the Australian Amateur Championship, which I touched on, the pedigree coming out of that event in the last 7 or 8 years is unbelievable. Winners, Lydia Ko, Minji Lee twice, Herjin Choi, we just mentioned, ran second. It's an extraordinary event. Suzuki Yamaguchi won over there, and she made the cut here, beat an absolute truckload of awesome professionals, Brooke Henderson, Kari Webb, you name them. And she was second to another girl, Yuri Yoshida from Japan. Don't write off Japan, is what I'm saying to you too. They've got it happening right now too.
It's a very competitive space at the moment, women's golf.
And secondly, just one before I get away from this, I've got so many things that we can talk about, so I apologise if I'm dribbling a little. Handa Green was absolutely awesome in helping Stephen Pitt and Jill Spargo announce the Vision 2025, which we'll talk to Steve about. She was captivating to an old media. She was fascinating to a new audience out in the fairways who watched her lead the charge for Australia the whole week, basically. But a little anecdote, if you don't mind. I got talking to her caddy a fair bit during the week, a guy from Florida called Paul, and he was just full of her praises, not as a golfer, but just as a human being. And we've had her on before, and we'll get her on again soon. And good luck to her in Coffs Harbour again this week. She was walking off the 12th tee on Friday afternoon during the tournament, and she was stopped and was asked to provide an autograph. And she stopped in the middle of her round and wrote on the girl's cap and chatted to her for 20 seconds walking along. And Paul sort of nodded to her like, come on. And she goes, "Paul, you don't get it. This is what it's all about." And then they left the girl and they kept walking. And Paul said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "That's the future of women's golf right there. If I don't take the time to talk to her, she may not play golf." This is a woman who's just won nearly $100,000 and in the biggest stage of her life without any question at all. And she's just got her head so screwed on so beautifully that she's got the big picture in mind. And that's the rock star we want to have leading the way.
Here. Perfect. Couldn't agree with you more. More of it, I say, particularly in golf. They need to be touchable and seeable and connectable and all of that. We'll keep rolling through. Stephen Pitt not too far away from joining us. We'll just roll through the rest of the news before we get to Pitty. Bubba wins for the first time in 2 years, his third win at Riviera. Can you believe that he had slumped at a career high of 2 in the world in the official World Golf Rankings? He'd slumped to 117 in the world before Genesis. Did you realise that? 117 in the world.
He's quirky, isn't he? Because he's won 10 tour events, Bubba Watson, but 2 of those are majors.
Yeah.
3 others are at Riviera. So 5 of his 10 wins have been at 2 different courses. So he likes to curve the ball, as we know. He's the biggest curver of the ball I've ever seen. And if he can find a course that he can kind of curl it round, at Augusta he fades around the corner. They're right to left holes, most of them, and it works brilliantly. And Riviera is a bit like that as well. So, look, he's quirky and he's very hot and cold. But when he's hot, look out for him at Augusta if he's got his game together.
I learned another quirky thing, Andy, that won't endear him to you. And I know that you are a long way back in the Bubba Watson fan club. It's not the highest ticket in your wallet, is it?
No, it's not.
He was asked whether he would change a light bulb. Did you read that?
Go on.
He was asked whether he would change a light bulb in his house, and he said, no, I wouldn't. For a start, my wife's taller than me, so she's 6'4", Angie. So I'd get her to do it if we had to put at a pinch. But he said, I wouldn't want to risk my hands. My hands are my career, Andy. And I just think changing a light bulb would jeopardise what I'm all about.
I think there was a survey.
Andy, that makes me like him even more.
I think there was a survey a couple of years ago, an anonymous survey of PGA Tour players, and they had to nominate the player they least liked, and he was at the top of that, I think.
Well, surely there's one other that's in front of him.
Oh yeah,
there has to be
Kevin
one other. Kevin Na.
Yeah.
What about our man?
Oh yeah, that bloke. Yeah, he's no good.
No, we'll leave him.
We'll wait till
some slack.
He'll get a run around at some stage this year because he'll do something stupid like he generally does. But Kevin Na, he must be an absolute nightmare. There was classic vision that did sort of go viral. I think it was on. He had about a 2.5 footer for par on. It was in the sort of business end of the second. I think up the back 9 on Sunday. It took him over a minute when it was his turn. When he stood over the ball, it took him over a minute to hit the ball. It was horrific. God knows what would happen had he knocked it 3 feet past. But it's just got to stop. It's got to stop. This is death of golf stuff. It cannot be allowed to happen.
My head's going to just wobble off here in a minute in disgust at that. And this is on the heels at Torrey Pines of the worst thing I've ever seen on the golf tournament. JB Holmes. Yeah. Over 4 minutes, literally just in excess of 4 minutes on the last hole in regulation play. And then he laid up into the rough. I mean, 6-hour rounds. I mean, we'll ask Stephen Pitt about what that does to golf. But, above all else, it took Jason Day's victory the next day into a Monday, or it took it into another day.
True.
It takes the whole gloss off the entire tournament. And that he put Alex Noren on the spot and made him feel awkward is just a disgrace. And honestly, to hear him say, "I don't care," is the most galling, just narcissistic crap I've ever heard from a professional player. I used to like him, but you can't do that. You cannot play 6-hour rounds. You are killing golf. Killing it. Dead.
Great. Now, Cam Smith tied 6, Andy.
Good point. Yeah, I didn't want to get too far.
He was in the mix.
Yeah, my word, he was. He was within a shot with he bogeyed 4 and then birdied 5 straight away and got to within a shot at about the turn. Just couldn't boot it home, unfortunately.
Look, he's 52nd in the world. I looked at the rankings the other day. So he's got some, he's having a really good year already. I think he's in the top 20 on the money list, but he needs to get his ranking inside 50 to get in the Masters. So that's the focus for him now. He's not playing this week, I don't believe, at the Honda, but Cameron is really going very well, and he's on the verge of getting himself into those majors.
The other one we should mention, just before we get too far away from this and forget it, and we'll bring Stephen Pitt after this and do the rest of the other stuff at the end of the show, but Aaron Baddeley was in the frame for a long time as well in this tournament, just petered out towards the end. But, I mean, he's now one of the old blokes flying the flag. He still looks as young as he did, when he was winning Australia. He hasn't changed much physically. He's still in terrific nick. But we should recognise the fact that the durability of this bloke, for all of the travails that he's put upon himself in terms of swing changes and, fooling around and fiddling around with setups and everything to do with the golf. He's made some major changes to the way that he plays the game. The fact that he's still out there, still competing, and he bobs up more often than we probably give him credit for on the PGA Tour. It's a remarkable career without ever scaling the heights that I think we all hope Baddeley would.
Well, I think he's won 4 times maybe on the PGA Tour. I mean, it's a fantastic career. If we could have a young guy up and coming achieve that now, you'd think it was a great result. He's got a happy knack, Andy, of getting a big check when he makes the cut. And he plays well on those sort of courses. He's obviously fond of Australian conditions, and Riviera is always compared to Australian courses, and no surprise to see him compete on that course so well. But when he's been sort of nowhere, it's a pretty impressive achievement.
No, he's a remarkable player, and he's still out there and competing. We'll get through the rest of all the other bits and pieces after a quick break here on Inside the Ropes.
Hi, this is Sherelle McMahon. Swing Fit is the fun, healthy, social way for women to get started in golf. You'll learn the basics of the golf swing and how to putt over a 6-week program, and get your whole body moving through yoga and Pilates-style exercises. You don't need any golf knowledge or equipment. Simply turn up in comfy clothing and get started. You'll be surrounded by like-minded people and receive constant support. So get outdoors, meet new friends, and learn a sport that you can play for the rest of your life. To find a program near you, visit swingfit.com.au.
Hey, Steph Ogilvy. I can't be in Australia very often, but I love keeping up with everything on Inside the Ropes podcast. A good bunch of guys, and I love listening.
Welcome back to the show. Always a joy to have the boss, the CEO of Golf Australia, join us on Inside the Ropes, Stephen Pitt. After a busy couple of months in Australian golf, Stephen, thanks for being on the show for the first time in 2018.
Always a pleasure, Andy.
We're going to talk Vision 2025 that was released during the but just your thoughts on Kionga and the way they staged and hosted the the Women's Open?
I thought it was exceptional. I mean, most of my views are gained from what the players think. That's probably the primary thing in terms of how the tournament plays out, and the players loved it. The feedback from pretty much everyone I spoke to was that they loved the course. We saw the course be a terrific tournament venue. There's a lot of holes, particularly towards the end, that wind around the clubhouse. So the atmosphere, especially on Sunday afternoon, was terrific. So I thought it was excellent. Course was amazing condition. I think Pernilla Lindberg said it was the best fairway she'd played on in something like 9 years of being a pro. So that's a ringing endorsement.
We're having a chat about it before, that the two cities that are hosting, more often than not at the moment, our major championships, women and men, unfortunately, for those of us who might want it in our particular necks of the wood, they're doing an outstanding job. The fans of the game and the clubs that are hosting the events, they keep just doing a terrific job and supporting the event, I imagine, the way that Golf Australia would want National Open supported.
Yeah, absolutely. In reference to the Women's Open, we've seen the city of Adelaide really embrace it, and that's media. It's obviously the golf clubs, Golf SA's been terrific in terms of helping with the running of the championship. And that's what you want. You really want your championship to be something special in that sort of city. Now, I think for us, we've seen it grow in Adelaide. We're there for the next 3 years, which we're excited about. But you're always looking, how do we make this better? So it's an unceasing quest to bring more people to the championship, to add on different things, and also always get your viewership up and make sure more people are taking notice of what you're doing.
And sort of broadly to that end, your release during the Women's Open Vision 2025, the future of women and girls in golf. Now, sporting bodies forever, and Blakey, Hazy, and I have been covering sport for a long time, not just golf, but sporting bodies are always releasing these white papers and these mission statements on how they're going to do this and how they're going to do that. And it sounds great at the time. It sounds like they're sort of tapping into a bit of a zeitgeist and whatever it might be. But then we kind of move on to the next thing, and it doesn't really kind of go anywhere. The determination of Golf Australia to really do something about a problem area, and that is attracting and retaining women in golf. How committed long-term is the body to making this 7-year project, a real thing that you're going to sort of hang your hat on and be measured against?
You know what? I think the critical thing will be our ability to actually invest into it. It's fine to talk about it. This is what we'd like to do. But for us, this is at least a $500,000 a year project. So the responsibility will be on the organisation to actually spend that money. And some of it we'll have to raise. And that process has already started. And we've had a really good take-up. We've probably raised about 20 to 25% of what we need to, and we know there's other avenues already. And obviously it'll take some general revenue from GA. But if you don't invest into these things, nothing happens. For us, we needed a long-term vision. We needed, you couldn't say we're trying to do this next year or in the next couple of years. There's some really deep changes that need to be made in how golf is played and run, which is why we gave ourselves a few years to get some results. Now, there's going to be milestones along the way. There'll be things we need to achieve to make sure that we've got momentum and we're actually achieving some change. But I think we do have a pretty clear vision on what we're trying to do. The key thing will be to get buy-in from all the other bodies like ALPG, PGA, I think the state bodies, and ultimately the clubs.
Clubs are key.
The clubs are where the battle's going to be won or lost. And some clubs, I think, are probably in already a pretty good position on this stuff. Some clubs are a long way behind. So it's about trying to get clubs into a position where they're marketing the game and spreading the game to the whole population, not a small segment of it. And I think golf needs that. I mean, we're in a tough market. People are busy with time, so we need to have the biggest potential market possible to be successful.
Absolutely.
Maybe we come back to the clubs because that's, I think, the interesting part for a lot of our listeners. But just so people are aware, like there's a lot of things in Australian golf that aren't, world class, but there's a lot of things that are. And I think Steve, you might correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it's important for our listeners here to realise that the RNA thinks enough of what we're doing here to have been a contributor to financially to a position that it's about to be fulfilled. We will speak to Stacey Peters later, who's already started. So we're going to have a couple of different staff members on really driving this on board, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. We've created 2 new positions. So firstly, Stacey Peters in the female pathway manager. That's something we've wanted to do for a while, and it's just been a matter of competing priorities and being able to find the money to invest in it. So she's already made a really big impact, I think, at GA in the office and outside the office. Just a perfect person to bring into the fold. And the second one's the female participation manager, and that's a really important position within the organisation. I think we're interviewing this week, so it's imminent. But we need someone that can help lead the charge in that space. So they're major investments already. So we're a staff of around 30 people, so to add 2 new bodies is a significant investment for us, but it's just part of the investment we need to make to grow the game and to make all of golf stronger. And I think the key to unlocking female participation is it has a flow-on effect to more kids. It probably allows more men to spend time at the golf club as well. If we can create family environments where families can spend some time together, it does, for some people, help eradicate that time barrier, which we know is the biggest barrier for golf.
Steve, the number that jumped out to me in Adelaide as a journalist was that you said that 20% of club members in Australia are female, and that's the lowest ever. And you had some interesting stats about the 70s, I think, where it was a lot higher than that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the membership chart, it's staggering. You can spend hours looking at it because it tells you so much. So if you go back to 1970, we had about 300,000 members, about 200,000 male and 100,000 female, so about 34% female. And what we saw through the 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe that Greg Norman fueled era, we saw male membership grow from effectively 200,000 to 400,000. And there's a point in time where men made that exact jump, and women's membership went from 102,000 to 104,000. So all this membership growth was male. So we weren't losing females, but we were just adding new golfers, and they all happened to be male. And I think when you work through that tells you a lot about trends in society, women going back into the workforce, and golf not really catering for that. So for half of the population, the product wasn't right.
And Jill Spargo, who's on the board and driving this a lot, said that if you could get it to 30% by 2025, that might be a good number. I mean, she would like it to get to 50%, but even if you could get it to 30 from 20.
Oh, look, 30 would be an outstanding result. That would actually have a really profound impact on golf membership. Just remember, if we'd kept female membership at 34%, we'd now have 100,000 extra people as members of golf clubs. So that if you had kept those ratios, we would have got up to about 600,000, and we'd be sitting at about 500,000. So it's pretty important when you think of it that way.
So the club that I play at has total equality for women. The women can play any time they want to. They play in any competition on any day. Is that what you're kind of looking for from clubs down the track? Would you like to see more of that, or how common is that? I don't know what your club is.
No.
I think it's pretty common in country areas. So country areas are a lot more egalitarian in terms of how they play their golf. Look, my view, and I'm not going to preach clubs how they should run their competitions and run their events, because ultimately that's the decision for the members. They attract members, and members say this is what we want out of our golf club. But I'd make a general observation that we're very competition focused when you compare us to other cultures around the world. We're very focused on this is a men's competition and only men can play at this time, and this is a women's competition and only women can play at this time. My thought is that will break down over time, and I think we'll become more about playing the game and less concerned about exactly who's playing and where we're playing. I think one of the great things about our current handicap system, and it'll morph into the world handicap system, is it does allow you to play one competition with players on different tees, which to me is a huge advantage, because it's not just about male-female. We're seeing people playing golf older into their life. We're seeing the distance between what the longest players can do and what the shortest players can do in terms of how far they hit the golf ball has never been wider. So trying to set golf courses up for 80-year-olds and 18-year-olds who can hit it sort of 310 metres, it's impossible. So I think tees are going to be becoming more important. And if we want to have comps, let's have comps where people can play off different tees.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, not get so worked up on, obviously honour boards and clubs and special comps. Yes, you would run them in a very formal, structured way. But I think beyond that, we probably get too worked up on these competitions, which are often held 5, 6, 7 days a week at clubs.
We might ask you more about the World Handicapping System in a second, but just before we leave that, and without pointing a finger at any specific clubs at all, because, as you say, they have the right to run their own agendas, would you say it was important for the committees, especially long-standing committee members, to take a look at the way they are perceived by people who walk through the doors of the clubhouse?
Yeah, look, I think it's not just committee members also. I think we have to, as golf members, have to have a much more open attitude towards growing the game and bringing new people when new people are in your clubhouse. And you hear stories all the time about members chipping visitors and things like that. Golf needs to move past that. We need to be really welcoming and nurturing and I like to say share the game. And I think club members in particular, not just committee members, but if we've got a view on let's nurture people, if people don't know some of the rules and etiquette, let's help them through that in a really friendly manner. Not, you hear so many stories about people being turned off golf by confrontation with an angry member. We need to get past that, and we need to have a more accessible approach to how golf can be played and grown.
I wonder how many clubs and club members actually have that in the back of their mind, that our job is to help develop and grow the game, as opposed to this is my patch and I'm going to protect it. I want to be able to sit on this table on a Thursday afternoon in that corner with those 4 people. And if anything comes along that's going to threaten that, if I walk in and I don't have my seat and I can't hit off at my time, I'm going to go to the committee and talk about this. So there's more of that, unfortunately, I reckon, from what I hear, than there is the sort of attitude that you're talking about, Stephen. I wish there was more of that.
Look, I think you hear about the bad more than the
probably
good.
Right.
And
probably right.
When you go out on a golf course in the afternoon and you see kids running around and there's a lot of that goes on. Even Lake Carrinup, which is one of your more traditional golf clubs, we were over there for the Australian Amateur not so long ago, the Friday afternoon.
How good is it there on a Friday afternoon?
That courtyard, pizza oven, kids, swarming with kids running around.
Bit of music in the corner.
Hallelujah.
Great.
I mean, to me, there's a number of clubs that are embracing that sort of stuff, and it'll happen more and more. So, we hear about the bad stuff, and I've been on a club committee, when you get a letter from a member complaining because he had to play with a junior and all that sort of stuff, that happens. But I think ultimately, if we can have a more welcoming culture and members take a view, I've got a responsibility to share golf because the game will be better for it, their club will be better for it, and the people that they're bringing into the game will be better for it. If we all think about how golf's improved our lives and enhanced our lives, the friends that it's brought into our lives, the moments of sheer joy, and there's obviously utter desperation from time to time, but I think our lives are all so much better because of this great game. Why wouldn't you want to share that with people around you?
It's left me sitting in a studio with this rabble, Steve.
Exactly right, what it does to you. So 4 pillars: culture, leadership, grassroots, high performance and coaching, marketing, positioning. They're the 4 pillars of Vision 2025. Can I suggest, as a father of 3 daughters, I've got a vested interest in one of those pillars more than any other, and that is the grassroots. If there's any way we can make golf clubs more open and encouraging to particularly young kids, don't worry about, and we're happy to take feedback on this on our Twitter account at Inside the Ropes. If you think that we're barking up the wrong tree or whistling Dixie, feel free to let us know about it. But I know for a fact, I can see it. They don't even have to say anything. You can see it on their faces. You bring your kids down to the golf club and they run around and make a bit of noise. They're not nowhere near a tee or a green, but just near the clubhouse or getting out of the car. You can see it. you can see it. The body language is overwhelming. So you are discouraged from bringing your kids down there. I wish there was more of that current up sort of
you know
example
what?
you talked about.
It might be the clubs I've been sort of spending my time at, and Victoria's I'm a member of Victoria and Commonwealth, and they're really welcoming towards kids. Victoria has around 60 girls aged 6 to 16. They're old figures, but they've really embraced that. So I've seen a number of clubs have a much, much more welcoming attitude towards kids. And I do think it's absolutely critical. So to me, from what I've seen, it's changing. Things like, if you're a member, yes, and even some of the clubs like Royal Melbourne, if you're a member, your kids can play for free. Bring them down the course for free. And that's what it should be. You don't want to pay a full member guest fee for your kids to play a few holes. So I think clubs are taking that on board and definitely improving.
Steve, I really like Vision 2025, the whole concept of it. As you said, it depends what happens from here that will really judge it. But I look at that 20% figure, 20% of members, and I go, well, glass half full or glass half empty. This is a great opportunity, isn't it?
This
is a great opportunity for golf to grow the game.
Yeah, and that's the number one thing I think clubs would say what they want out of GA and the state bodies. We want more members. That would probably be the number one thing. So we need to think about what that could look like, and I think women offer just an amazing opportunity in that space. And you're right, Martin, it is half full, half empty. If you talk to the UK, they'd love to have 20% of membership female. If we talk to New Zealand or Scandinavia, they're well above that. I mean, New Zealand, I think, is about 30%. So there's role models for us to follow. And often those countries with higher percentages are less competition focused than what we are. So we need to think through our product offering. I think for people that want to play competition every time out, that's fine, and that vehicle's available. For people who probably want a less formal approach or more relaxed approach, I think that is available too.
Sure.
And we've got 1,500 clubs, so we can tailor that offering. There's always room for a high-end club that doesn't change much and is very traditional, and there's room for other clubs that offer more to families and kids, and so we've got it there. We're fortunate. We've got a product offering that's available right around the country in cities and country towns, and it can be a flexible product.
Can I ask you about role models in another sense, and just another anecdote before I do about Hannah Green, who I was led to believe now goes back to Mount Lawley every time she's in Perth and basically conducts it or goes down and sees the junior girls pennant squad, which I think is unbelievable. They all know her by name. No surprise, Steve, then that Sue Thompson, I think, who runs that program, has reported like an influx of more and more girls coming, and more importantly, I guess, less of a churn. How important is Hannah Green, Minjee Lee, Sue O in being accessible now to the media? We have just seen Hannah's popularity surge in the last 8 or 9 months since she started dominating on the Symetra Tour last year, but it's really kicked on. How important is that to have someone to attach that to for young kids?
Well, I think it's critical, and young kids always look towards the younger players. I think Kari and Catherine have done an amazing job and carried the torch for so long. They've both been pretty accessible to the media. Kari, the interest she's taken in Australian golf, particularly women and girls, is unbelievable. So, we've been fortunate with that, but, we do need a new brigade coming through. And Hannah, I got to spend a bit of time with Hannah at Women's Open. She's just something special as a player. Sometimes in my job, you don't get a lot of time to see people play, and I just got to watch Hannah on the practice fairway for a period of time, and I just thought how good her swing was. And we've got a new benefactor for women and girls already, and we put him and his guests with Hannah, and they just, at their request, and they just had just an amazing day, and Hannah was fantastic. And so I got a text from them saying they're firmly entrenched in the green team. And
any truth in the rumour that she's modelled her swing on yours?
You couldn't get two more different golf swings.
Okay, Stephen, good luck with Vision 2025. That's the introduction to the interview. We're not talking New England Patriots now, but so we'll turn our attention to the Boston Red Sox. Just now that we're in the serious part of the interview, can we have a chat about what's going on in the AL East this year?
I'm worried about the Yankees lineup.
Right, 3 and 4 looks a problem, I reckon. There might be a bit of home run generation going on there, Hazy.
Oh, my goodness.
Stephen, thanks for coming on. It's always great to have you on the show.
Pleasure, absolute
Stephen
pleasure.
Pitt, CEO of Golf Australia. There's a lot of meat on that bone. Hopefully we'll see the growth in women's game follow the outlining of ambition via Vision 2025.
G'day, I'm My Golf Ambassador Jason Day. I'm really excited to be an ambassador for My Golf, Australian Golf's national junior program, jointly run by Golf Australia and the PGA. My Golf is every Aussie kid's first step on their golfing pathway. It's all about teaching children the basic skills of golf in a safe and healthy environment, and just as importantly, about the life skills that golf can teach you that distinguish our sport from the rest. Remember to visit mygolf.org.au for more information.
G'day, it's Nick O'Hearn here. Whenever I get the chance, I catch up with Inside the Ropes to follow up on all the latest golf, and I urge you to all do the same. It's a great show.
Welcome back to the show. Very good friend of ours here on Inside the Ropes podcast. Going to be even a better friend of the program this year, Hazy, about to join us on the show.
A big friend, Andy. One of the great characters of women's golf in Australia in the past decade or so. And we're delighted that Stacey Peters, formerly known to many, sort of like Prince changing her name, but formerly known as Stacey Keating, is not only going to join us here in a minute, but also through the year on Inside the Ropes, which is going to be fantastic.
We can hear you in the background there, Stace. Welcome to the show for the first time in 2018.
Hey, guys. Thanks very much for having me again. I'm really looking forward to the year ahead.
Now, we're going to talk to you about the next phase of your life in golf as the National Female Pathway Manager for Golf Australia. We'll kind of flesh that out after we talk about what's in front of you right now. And we've all been caught up in the Asian Amateur Championship in the last decade, I guess it's been going for 10 years. Yep. Become a really outstanding tournament for the next wave of young players in this region coming through for the boys.
A staple in the Asia-Pacific region, Andy. And, it's got worldwide attention on it, and it's really helped bring the world of golf together in so many aspects. It gives everyone in our region a chance to get onto the big stage, and that's enormous. But there's been one thing lacking, Stace, hasn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously there hasn't been a women's event. So this is, the first time this year in Singapore right now, and the girls get underway today. So really looking forward to it. I mean, the week so far has been great. The girls have been treated really well. Hotels are awesome. The golf course is awesome at Sentosa. And even the HSBC event here for LPGA is played on the same course next week. So, I mean, you can imagine the condition of it. I mean, it's awesome. The girls are so excited, and, they're looking forward to getting into it.
So, Stace, we've been talking with Steve earlier on about, the ever-growing importance of golf, women's golf in Australia and the world for that matter. This is absolutely part of it. It's gone under the radar a little bit just because of the proximity to the Women's Australian Open, but this is enormous, isn't it? Let's put out on for our listeners here. This is a chance for the woman who wins this gets a shot at the ANA Inspiration, the Women's British Open, and the tournament Stacey just mentioned next week back at the same course.
Phenomenal.
I mean, it's an unbelievable prize.
It's awesome. It's pretty, like 2 majors and 1 massive Asian event. It's kind of like it's 3 majors, really. I mean, it's awesome. I'm even going to say I'm not going to say it's better than Augusta, what the boys get, but I mean, it's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, it's going to be life-changing for one of these girls in 4 days' time. I mean, to get those exemptions is really something else.
Stacey, it's Blakey here. I was watching Grace Kim play last week, and I think she's in that group that's playing this week. Who have we got that's who would you expect to jump up? Is there anyone in particular you would think could jump up and have a chance?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Grace Kim. We've got 6 girls here. 3 qualify off world rankings, and then 3 are selections. So we've got Kirsty Hodgkins, Robin Choi, and Julianne Su. They're girls, Aussie girls that are playing college golf in the States. And then Eliza Hetherington, Becky Kay, and then obviously Grace Kim, who played the Aussie Open last week. I mean, all the girls seem like they're playing really solid. I think Grace Kim, after the experience of last week, I think that will really help her, obviously going forward, but I think it'll really help her this week. Julianne's great ball striker. Yeah, I mean, the college girls, I think, I think we've got a great mix this week. I really do.
A couple of those names have been lost in the last year or so because of their college commitment stakes, haven't they, in terms of being recognised on the Australian women's amateur scene. So we've lost them effectively for a couple of years. Kirsty Hodgkins is our highest ranked player there this week, and I would imagine she played a key role in Queensland winning the Interstate Series for women in Queensland a couple of years ago. But since then, she's been away in Colorado, that not many people would even have a grasp of who she is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I guess, I wouldn't like to use the term lost in the college system, but it's kind of, I guess they're just not getting as much recognition over here. Maybe that's something I can do a better job of. And, I mean, I've been trying to, within my new role, I guess I've been trying to really stay in contact and communicate with the college girls because they're a huge part. I mean, they're some of our highest ranked girls in the world ranking system right now. So we want to be, keeping them in the loop in our programs. And obviously they can be, in for our representative teams going forward, whether it be Queen Syndicate, World Cup later this year, and they're girls that are right in the mix to be getting those selections.
Stace, talk us through your role, because you're not their coach as such, are you? It's more probably a mentoring role. Would that be fair to say, as someone who's been out on the tour recently or up to this point yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd like to call myself like a glorified mentor. I think it's, it's just with the communicating with the girls, with their service teams, within each of the states and obviously the college girls, and keeping them in the loop with what we're doing, things that, I can be helping them on their pathway, helping with their training, their practice, and then like tournament preparation and stuff. Obviously this week, and I guess, that sort of stuff when I'm travelling with them, with the teams as well. Yeah.
Stacey, the word pathway is part of your title and you've mentioned it a couple of times. Tell us about the importance of an event like this in this region and how that sits in terms of the pathway for the girls who get into these elite programs as a junior, but then that step from that point of their golfing journey into the kind of pro ranks, if you like, where this sits and just how important a plank in the pathway it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for them to be playing against the best girls, well, obviously, as we know right now, the strongest girls, for women are in Asia, aren't they? So I guess for our girls, and, the whole field really, to be playing against the best from this region, I mean, it's gonna let the girls know where they're sitting within the competition. And I think for our girls, they will get a lot of motivation from this as well. They see how hard the Asians are working, and I can see little bits of that already. So I think it's very important to be getting these sort of opportunities against the best girls in Asia, because like the college girls and stuff, they wouldn't be playing against. Like I believe the college system it's great and the competition is awesome, but they're not getting exposed to these girls that are just playing in Asia. Some of the girls that aren't even, that'll be the best in the field here haven't got the highest world rankings because they're not playing those events. So it's kind of hard to judge. It'll be interesting to see as the week progresses. But, yeah, I think it's very important for our girls, very motivating. And, I think it's great in the pathway.
So, Stace, it's a sort of a sign of the respect that this tournament's already going to be held with, that the college system has let the players go a little bit to come and play and try and qualify for all those big advantages you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. Because you go, Hazy.
And that didn't even that's not even possible for the Australian Amateur Championship, which is already producing just this magnificent women's honour roll. And we'll talk about that. We talked about that a little earlier on too, but. The chance to see all the women of the region come together in one big hit. We know the Koreans are awesome. We saw the Japanese players dominate at the Australian Amateur Championship. And there's some awesome Thai players here this week, including that young girl, pardon me if I get her name incorrect, but Ataya Titikul from Thailand, who took one of Lydia Ko's records as the youngest winner on the LET. I mean, it's a conglomeration of everything that's good about Asian golf.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said with the college girls, because it is tough, they have to be keeping up their schoolwork, and I understand that from their coach's point of view. But for them to be let out, is that the right word?
Sure.
Let loose, I'm not sure. But, yes, for them to, because sometimes, like, they can't even do all the representative teams. I know that they can't go to, they're not able to go to Queen Syndicate in a few months if they were to be selected, because it clashes with an event over there, and the college coaches just kind of like, no, can't happen. And obviously they've let them go for this week. So obviously it's great that the college recognises that as well, and that they are going to be playing against some of the best, from Japan, Korea, Thailand, like those names that you mentioned.
Stace, just a philosophical question here. Like, you talked a lot about the standards that the Asians set in this particular game, and I've actually spoken to Paul McNamee about this in tennis as well, and he was saying to me a few years ago that, like someone like Novak Djokovic, at 12 years of age or something like that, he moved country to go into a coaching camp. I mean, there are places around the world where people don't focus as much on education. They're focused on being a better athlete, whereas in Australia we tend to have more of a holistic view, don't we? So it doesn't necessarily lend itself to producing the better athlete necessarily, does it? So how do we find that balance, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm always going to be one that's pushing for the education, for sure. I think we've seen a mix through Australia. Like, it seems to have gone in waves, like with college, girls going to college, girls turning professional straight away. And again, I think it depends on what level they're at. Like we see the Minji Su's, Handa, that have just gone on and turned professional because I feel their game is at, such a level. Then you get a different wave that are going through to college. But I think I'll definitely be one that is pushing the education side of things, because I think it's so important. But I do think it's good for the girls to have a balance, like to be studying and practicing, even at that high level of amateur golf. I think it's something that's really important, and they just have to be good at their time management, getting their studies done, getting their practice done. I still think it is possible to be a great golfer while studying.
Stacey, you're an awesome appointment. You obviously got a wealth of experience. You've got enormous energy. You care about the role that you've been given the responsibility of. So we can't wait to speak to you more about it. Last one from me, though, in terms of balancing that with your own golf, are you still going to be teeing it up from time to time, or is this it for you? Have you given it away, sort of professional tournament golf?
I was always going to play the Aussie Summer, and then not too much after that. So I'm actually going to play the New South Wales Open next week, and then not too much going forward from there. Maybe the odd event here or there, depending how I feel or how GA feel about that. Maybe things like, the Vic Open. I would love probably to play that event for the next 28 years, I think.
Yes.
So, ask me that next January if I'm not practicing as much. Maybe not. So I might just play that by ear. But, not a lot for me travel-wise going forward. Yep.
Stace, I just want to let you know that it's not going to be this light on you. We're not going to ask you these Dorothy Dixes as you sit in the studio with us later in the year. I want you to know that.
You can ask me whatever. I'll be as honest as I can with you guys.
We're going to be brutal on you. Absolutely brutal.
I'm nervous. No, I'm excited.
Hey, Stace, good luck in terms of what's immediately in front of you over there at Sentosa. We're going to be following not only the development of this tournament in the next 4 days, but for the next 400 years. Well, we won't be, because we'll be pushing up daisies by then. But this is such an exciting addition to the women's game in this region. It's brilliant, and we know what the boys' version of it's come to mean to everybody involved, and certainly from the word go, it's going to be a really important facet for the women's game. Good luck to the team. We can't wait to see you back here. We'll have you're going to be part of the show regularly throughout 2008, and we can't wait to have you in the studio.
Hey, really looking forward to it, guys, and I'll pass on my wishes to the girls.
Good on you. Stacey Peters, National Female Pathway Manager over at Sentosa in Singapore for the Women's Amateur Asian Championship, joining us here on Inside the Ropes.
The Golf Australia website is now the place to go to look up your handicap and so much more. Whether you're out and about on your phone or in the office trying to avoid work, just go to golf.org.au and punch your golf link number into the box at the top of the homepage. Who knows, maybe that last round was just good enough to put you in single figures. While you're on the site, check out the daily golf results at your club, view our course index for up-to-date ratings, read the latest golf news from home and abroad, listen to Australian golf podcasts and interviews, and watch video tournament highlights or tips to improve your game. It's everything a golf tragic could want. Visit golf.org.au today, the home of Australian golf.
G'day guys, it's Brian Russell here, and I'm a long way from home, playing on the Latin America tour and living in the US, but I keep up with all my Australian golf by listening to Inside the Ropes.
So just the final bits and pieces before we wrap up the show. We had to get to Stephen Pitt and Stacey Peters, so we didn't get a chance to talk about the European Tour. The Oman Open was played, I think, was that the first time the Oman Open was played?
Oh, it's a time-honoured event.
Well, you know what it will be? I'm not sure it will be. How long does something have to be played before it becomes time-honoured? But how the Greg Norman team has been able to produce a golf course like that in those conditions. Like, it's on a flat, sandy wasteland. The golf course on TV
gives a new definition of the expression sandbelt.
Well, it does. I mean, I'll be interested to hear Clates when he joins. Well, I'm keen to ask him about this, but it was visually very easy on the eye. The players, now you never know with players whether they're sort of half on the payroll to pump this thing up as part of their, performance and appearance, but they were glowing in their recommendations of the course. It did seem to be in absolutely pure condition. Loughton wins at 16 under the card, beats Chris Wood 13 under. Sam Brazel, the best of the Australians, 7 under the card, tie for 16. But the course was amazing.
Greg doesn't do anything that comes out bad, does he? Everything that he touches is good. And if I wanted to really wind you up, Andy, I'd just mention the interview that Greg did on the 7:30 report, in which he once again backed the President of the United States,
let's not
Donald
go
Trump.
Why are you doing that to me on the first show of the year? Why would you do that to me? I'm in such a good mood. The only thing that was more impressive and more visually stunning than the golf course was Robert Rock's hair. It's gone to
There's a Twitter handle, Robert Rock's hair, isn't
it's gone to a whole new level. His hair has gone to a whole new level.
I've never seen him and Ray Martin in the same room at the same time.
He's got Ray covered.
Oh, yeah.
Ray's not real, is it? Is Ray real hair?
I'm not sure.
Is Rock's real hair?
Oh, yeah.
It's one piece.
It's a thing of absolute beauty. And it was in, I don't know whether it's just bouncing off the Black Sea or whatever it is over there, but it just was in an element that just allowed it to shine. It was superb. Don't laugh, Hazy. I know you've got a good thatch. Yours isn't too bad, Blakey. I'm in real trouble. But Robert Rock's hair was the thing of absolute beauty. Closer to home, the Australasian PGA Tour, the Queensland PGA was played last week. Daniel Fox wins 18 under the card. A couple of our perennials, Steve Jeffress and Matty Miller, just whenever you have a Pro-Am or a State Open or State PGA, lock those two blokes in to finish top 10. They are remarkable players.
Yeah, we bang on about the golden era and everything like that, but these guys just keep bobbing up. Doesn't matter how many young guys and young guns thrust themselves into these tournaments. These guys just ultra professional and just seem to put their nose in the frame all the time. Brilliant, well done, Daniel Fox. It's a tough course to win on because the chances of scoring a low score there are high. Our man Aaron Price, a couple of 64s and then a 66, and couldn't get the job done. I mean, the scoring there is just off the charts.
And a blue with Johnny Huggan on Twitter on the way through. Just obligatory these days for Pricey to upset someone on Twitter, and it was Huggy this time, so that's always worth
It
following.
can be a bit prickly, John Huggan.
Pricey
say
does
the least.
Pricey does know how to push a button on Twitter.
Yeah.
I do enjoy. There's only one Twitter account I enjoy more than Aaron Price's at the moment.
John Huggan.
No, in golf. Huggy's right. Huggy's in the top 5. Eddie Pepperell's Twitter account.
Yeah.
He put out a tweet this week, and I'm going to swear here, so I do apologise preemptively, but he said, blokes are always putting tweets of their own swings on Twitter and whatever. He said, Eddie Pepperell said this week, I hit it so well on the range today, I almost posted a video. Then I realised even I don't give a shit. It was just, he's highly worth following, Eddie Pepperell.
He's high on the priority list, I reckon, for us to get down here.
Couldn't agree with you more.
This coming next summer, I should say. The PGA of Australasia did an awesome job, especially on short notice, getting beef down here for the World Super 6 Perth, which was an awesome tournament, by the way, and we probably should have touched on that. We probably have got a second to do it, but the guys who aren't necessarily at the top of the world but who move the needle, they're the ones we want, and Eddie Pepperell's one of those coming up, I reckon.
I love him. And if you two can pull your significant strings at GA to get him down here next summer, I will follow him for 4 days and I want to see every post-round interview that he does. I think it'll be absolutely worth it. Just before we get away from the Queensland PGA, there's a bloke who finished tied 5th in this tournament, an amateur. He shot 62 in the final round. He went out in 30. Now, an amateur, I don't know anything about this bloke. An amateur shoots 30 in the final round of a state PGA. He might get a bit, oh, geez, I'm in the mix here. He might get a bit chilly and realise the moment's a bit bigger than he's ready for and come back and shoot 39 on the way in. Shoots 32 on the way in. Shoots 62 in the final round. I've never heard his name. I've never seen him, but I like the profile of what he did in the final round. His name's Maverick Antcliffe. Do you know anything about Maverick Antcliffe?
I know a little bit about Maverick Antcliffe because he's been off the radar for so long in the college scene. So he's actually. I've surprised you here, haven't I?
You have.
He played at.
I'm not putting it past you, by the way.
Augusta University, and he actually played all 4 years. So he was on the team the whole 4 years.
Okay.
So he's I wouldn't say a decorated college player, but an accomplished college player. And he's a Queenslander, so he's probably had a bit of knowledge up there. Andy.
Yep.
But arguably one of the great names in world golf already.
Maverick Antcliffe.
Feel the need for speed, Maverick.
Oh, mate, I can't. We need this guy to keep, as you would say, Hazy, keep going north.
Correct. Yeah.
He just needs to become.
Well, we'll get him on here, Andy, so you can have a talk to him.
I would love to know more about Maverick Antcliffe.
In the next month, I'll have Mav on for you.
Lovely. You two, any little bits and pieces of general business before we wrap it up?
Just wanted to talk about distance of the golf ball, Andy. Martin
we haven't
Slumbers.
done that before.
Is that a surprise? That's good. I think this is really interesting. Martin Slumbers, the CEO of the R&A, said last week that, this is a quote, "Our view is we've probably crossed that line in the sand and that a serious discussion is now needed." Are they sort of inching to the line where they're going to do something? Because Augusta, as part of this, Augusta is going to put their fifth hole, the tee on their fifth hole, back about 20 or 30 metres as well, because they're worried about that. It's one of the harder holes on the course, Hazy. But, you know, are they... It sounds as though... I mean, the USGA's said something about the golf ball recently as well, so it sounds like they might actually start... having a committee to have a discussion to talk about this.
I think I mentioned this on Inside the Ropes in early November, but I asked someone at Augusta. It must have been Billy Payne, actually.
If you don't mind. At
Royal Wellington in the Asia Pacific Amateur Championship question, and very unlike them to interject. And Slumbers actually came in and across the top because I think I asked Billy Payne about changes at Augusta and what you're prepared to do if the game doesn't act from a rules perspective. And he actually said, Martin Slumbers came in and said, it is getting to the 11th hour now. We have to do something. He wasn't that forthright, but that was the intimation of what he was saying. Right, so it's on the board, I reckon. And
one more thing.
Yeah.
Adam Scott was photographed working at Riviera last week on the range where he played and made the cut with a guy called George Gankas, Gankas. Google him when you get home. I was told by a national coach in Adelaide last week that George Gankas, who does a lot of his coaching as a kind of a blog on the internet, is one of the most left field coaches out there. He puts some of the others to shame. So what would Adam Scott be doing working with a kind of a left field out there kind of coach when you've got a swing like that? I don't know if it's an ongoing thing. Maybe it was a one-off. I don't know. It's on Twitter. Rob Lusetich, who's a journo who works out of there for Fox, he took the photo. He couldn't believe it. But that's a worry.
It's interesting.
I'm just going to segue because I don't know what we can add to the conversation about. Was it Mankus?
Gankas.
George Gankas.
The only thing I would say about that is I wonder whether Scotty's at a point now where he realises that having a beautiful swing's not enough anymore.
Okay.
Maybe he's at a point where he realises I've got to do something else here. I need to expand my, mental sort of horizon. Perhaps, I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here.
He said in the past that he doesn't hit his wedges close enough. That's
always,
one thing. But
which in turn puts speculation and focus on his putting.
Yeah, so he's putting from 25 feet when he'd like to be putting from 6 feet. A bit more.
Just a loose segue there on Scott. You touched on Cam Smith before and his world ranking, and we also touched on Kari Webb. These two have been the staple of Australian golf for a long time now. So Cam Smith's gone past Adam Scott in the world rankings. So Adam Scott's now the 4th ranked Australian, which I think is staggering, given he was number 1 in the world not that long ago. He's now down to number 58. The clock's not ticking, but it sort of is. Like he could do anything, but I've already, as we've said, written off Tiger, and Scotty's not in that age bracket yet, but he's getting up there to where it will start ticking soon, and I think he needs to make a bit of a song and dance soon, otherwise his ranking will continue to go the other way, and he will go south. So it's quite remarkable that he's dropped down to 58 in the world.
He's not qualified for the US Open at this point. He's in the Masters as a past winner.
Of course, yeah.
I believe he's in the Open Championship, but he's not in the US Open. I read that somewhere the other day.
And now on the women's side, for the first time in modern history, Kari Webb's not in the top 100 as we mentioned, but we've got 5 players now. Hannah Green with a bullet up to 92. It's already become the Hannah Green podcast in 2018, hasn't it?
There'll be a restraining order on you. So.
But it's a great thing to see, almost sort of quietly, the next generation pushing through.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, before we wrap it up, I just want to put one thing in the time capsule before we wrap it up. You mentioned 6 weeks until we get to Augusta. Blakey, I want you two to nominate, and I'll jump in last for what it's worth, you two to nominate a player on the men's side of the game, we'll do the women next week, to win a major championship. You don't have to declare which one. You just got to pick one player who will win a major championship in 2018.
Well, clearly, the form guide tells you Cam Davis is going to win one of these major championships.
Well, that would be a me. What form guide are you looking at?
If you've won the Australian Open, you're going places in majors the next year.
This is a very good point.
Failing Cameron Davis, saluting.
We're all barracking for that.
Oh, it would be unbelievable. But what I think is going to happen is Jason Day, if he can stay fit, will win another one. That's obviously parochial, and failing that, I'm going with Johnny Rahm.
Oh,
okay.
You've taken my two.
Oh, there you go. You two have spent too much time together.
So John Rahm's a man mountain. I think he's got to be a big chance this year. So he's taken my two. I'm going to say Phil Mickelson.
Wow.
How old's Phil? Well into his 40s?
He's nearly
47 or something.
Champions Tour eligible.
Yeah, I think he's like 47.
Just had 3 top 10s in a row.
He's playing well.
He's playing pretty well. And at Augusta, watch out for Phil.
Justin Rose for me.
Yeah.
Rose will win one this year. He's just ticking along at the top level, seemingly top 10 every time he tees it up. He's winning a lot. He seems to just have his game in total order. We know he's capable on the big stage. He's been there and done it before. So I reckon if you had to pick one.
DJ, Spieth, Thomas?
Yeah.
Too obvious. Yeah.
Okay.
Is Rose obvious? Rose is pretty obvious.
Fairly obvious in the top 10 in the world. You didn't go exactly out on a limb there, Andy. Against my Phil.
Well,
at least I offered up something.
You're only plucking Phil because he took Rahm. You hadn't even thought about Phil until then. It's just completely plucked out.
No, Jason, look, Jason's due, isn't he? I'd love to see Jason.
You tell you what he's doing. I'll tell you what he's doing. I just did a little look at Jason Day v Rory McIlroy at the moment, and their difference in their putting at the moment is remarkable. And the pot on Rory continues to be his ability to get the ball in the hole. And
changed putter again?
Well, the putting stats early this season are not good.
Day's putting stats, shots gained,
off the
number
chart.
one in the
off the chart
PGA
at the moment. There's only been, I think both he and Rory have only had 5 measurable rounds, I think they call it, for strokes gained putting. But Day's number 1. And I think Rory, in fact, I couldn't even find Rory's name on the official PGA stats yesterday, but it was like -0.07, like minus -0.079, which would have had him about 125 on the PGA Tour at the moment. So he's conceding about a shot and a half per round to Jason Day. So multiply that by 4. He's going to have to just hit the ball so much better.
Yeah, which isn't going to happen.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Before we go, Andy, I mentioned the World Super 6 Perth, which I thought was a phenomenal event. And a name that we've had on our lips for a while.
I bet you I know who you're going to mention here.
Well, Lucas Herbert.
I knew it was that.
we shouldn't neglect what he's done in the last few months. Second at the New South Wales Open, in the last group with Jason Day at the Emirates Australian Open for 2 rounds. Didn't get the chocolates, but finished well in the top 10. Fantastic achievement. Did really well. The Aussie PGA the following week.
Tied 7th there.
Then has gone up and he's got his card in China.
8th in Singapore.
8th in Singapore, which opened up a whole realm of things for him, including a berth in the Open Championship this year at Carnoustie. Going great guns. Coulda, woulda, shoulda beaten Nappy Barnrat in the semi-final at Karrinyup. Didn't quite get that job done. Finished it off with third, but really going places, and his head's in the right spot. And if we can put someone with an asterisk right now in the time capsule that I think we want to look back on in 12 months' time, I'm Lucas Herbert.
We all love him. He went and played at Oman. I know you don't, all that. You're clearly dismissing it as a time-honoured event right before it's even really got off the ground. And he's got good people around him, really good people around. I love the Herbert clan. I love everything about them. I just hope, as he's emerging, because he is really starting to make a name for himself, that they can just pace themselves. Don't go gangbusters at everything just because you've got a chance to go and play there. I hope he just paces himself, because he's a bit like that. We love his impetuosity and his enthusiasm, and he's gregarious and all of that. And I feel like he's the sort of like, I'll jump on the plane and I'll go over there, and I can play there. I'll jump on the plane and I'll go over there. And I just hope he just has a bit of balance and is measured about the way he plots his way through the next sort of 12 to 24 months.
I was talking to his coach, just to appease your fears there, perhaps, Andy. I was talking to his coach briefly just around the Vic Open time, which is when he got his card. He won his card by finishing second on the PGA Tour China Q School. So he's into that. And they neglected the chance to play the Vic Open, which I actually think he would have started in my books. If I was running a book down there, he would have started a nominal favourite.
Yep.
They turned their back on that, which he didn't want to do, but he did it because big picture, he's looking at web.com next year.
Great.
If it happens to be Europe or whatever, that's fine too. But I think his eyes were on the prize of China now, top 5 later this year. He'll go on to the web.com tour and away we go.
Perfect. We're all excited about him. Boys, it's been fun again. Episode 31.
31.
Well, we'll do 32 next week. Will he be here, Hazy?
We'll see. We'll review the performance.
I might be an exclusion.
You're definitely in the A team.
Okay,
There's no
that's
question
good,
about
Andy.
it. There's no
I knew
question
you'd say
about
that.
it.
You're a good man.
Boys, thanks for being
Thank you,
part of
boys.
it again. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Martin Blake, Mark Hayes, Andy Maher, Inside the Ropes. Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll be back to do it all again next week.